Welcome, everybody, to our media roundtable session. Good afternoon, and we're glad to have you here. Fine group of gentlemen here. All of them have spoken for us before at in-person events, webinars, etc. Great leaders in the media space, and we're really thrilled to have them. Once again, we want to say thank you to our educational sponsor here at Mojo, and a real quick message from Greg at Mojo.
Before the session begins, I'd just like to say that Mojo is a very proud sponsor of the education series. We hope you go to every session, ask lots of questions, and learn new things. Enjoy your day. We'll see you soon.
Gentlemen, welcome. Tom, John, thank you guys. Last night was awesome. It's nice to see humans in real life and be around everyone again. It's great. This is going to be really more of a conversation and something that we started talking about a couple weeks ago, and really just want to continue a dialogue around the marketplace and really how does it affect us as performance marketers. So we started out really talking about the upfront. That's, it's moving the lion's share of inventory, and from our perspective, from an agency side, we're seeing a lot of, a ton of demand and less supply. So basic economics, and the supply is going down. We're seeing fewer eyeballs on linear. They're migrating. I think everyone knows that. And a lot more money moved into the marketplace this year. Some of that money that was on the sidelines from the general marketplace, from entertainment to retail to travel, a lot of that money came back in and really impacted the upfront marketplace. So I think from our perspective, just want to ask, are you guys seeing the exact same thing, or any observations, anything new? I know you guys mentioned something about options changing a little bit. So we'll start with you, Sean.
So first, I would say yes. Right? We're seeing that same supply and demand. What's interesting, right, you started phrasing it saying that there's reduction in supply. That's true from the linear standpoint, but then you pointed to the shift. So from our standpoint, we have to consider who we are as consumers and how we all consume media. That's what we're seeing in the marketplace. We just have to be malleable. We have to be dynamic in how we plan and how we buy. From the NBCU standpoint, what we're looking at is how do we engage an audience, right? What we're known for is our premium IP. How do we get that to consumers? And that's how we're packaging our content and making it available for marketers to reach the desired consumer.
Got it. Dan?
Without a doubt, we're seeing, an influx of dollars from brands that we hadn't seen or heard from. So that was great. And then the standard folks increased to try to gain back from what was lost a year and a half ago. And from a supply side for us, we benefit from all of the networks. So we get to kind of follow the trends and the eyeballs that way. And then by extending the screen into the OTT space, we get to follow them that way as well. So, the market is definitely, it's very unique right now in regards to the pressure that we're seeing, and even the rates that folks are willing to kind of participate in.
Yeah.
Oh, lots of changes with the upfront. Our network portfolio consists of MeTV, H&I, which is Heroes and Icons, and Start. Those are the three rated networks in our portfolio. And our upfront this year was up double digits across the board. In fact, our volume on H&I and Start were up triple digits. Obviously, there's pressure on ratings in the marketplace, so people are trying to find new outlets, new platforms that they could get their money down in and whatnot at a reasonable CPM. So we took quite a bit of new business this year, and seen some sizable increases on existing businesses and whatnot. Upfront this year, very unique. It started a lot earlier, the conversation. We thought it was going to break a lot earlier than it did. In fact, we're still writing some deals as we speak. There's still some money that's trying to get down in the marketplace. Things that have changed. You mentioned options. That was one of the big negotiation tools this past year, where a lot of the upfront players wanted flexibility. They wanted almost to have options equivalent to the direct response community, they want some relief toward the end of their flights. So we had to grant that. But I think also the hybrid work model. We had, we doubled the amount of meetings that we had this year, and we're working from home, and it was all because of Zoom. So normally we'd fly out to New York. We're Chicago-based. We'd fly out to New York or LA and do our upfronts, and we'd have a room of 10 or 15 people in there. And this time on Zoom, we have a room of 70 to 100 people. So a lot of the VPs and presidents and the higher ups who make the decisions were on those calls. So they actually got to see our platforms and what we had to offer. And I think that whole, utilizing Zoom or whatever really helped a lot of the mid-tier networks, get some momentum this past year.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, and not that everyone in this room is really active in the upfront marketplace, but more to understand the theme here is really scarcity. There's a lot less inventory in linear this year than there has been. Yeah. And we're hearing about a lot more money on the sidelines waiting for the scatter market too. So it begs the question, what's left for DR? What do we, your loyal 52-week-a-year advertisers are now going to be taking the brunt of a lot of price increases, and it's a much more challenging paradigm for us. So we're curious. Why don't we go up in reverse order this time, Jeff?
Sure. That's probably the question to ask in a few weeks. You have open enrollment or medical supplement, starting soon. There's a lot of pressure in the marketplace already from upfronts, as well as hybrid DR, who are buying networks that are rated on a CPM basis, not necessarily cost per call, cost per click. So I think the issue that these negotiations in open enrollment started early on in February this year. And the reason fourth quarter last year was so aggressive with people who shifted budget from second quarter 2020 into fourth quarter 2020, and there was a lot of pressure then, and a lot of people didn't even get the inventory that they normally get on a consistent basis. So they're out in front of it this year and wanting a secure deal in the DR world early. So I know those deals exist. I heard there's network groups that are out of sale in that category. The question becomes is what's left for the traditional DR guys? And you make a valid point. There are advertisers who advertise with us 52 weeks out of the year. Anyone can get caught up into a rate, and that's what's happening right now in the market. You're seeing some astronomical rates that don't make any sense, but that's what people want. They want to get their money down, and they're willing to pay whatever they can. But you also have to think about the guys that have been there for you since day one or 52 weeks out of the year, and leave a percentage of that inventory for them. Work with them on their cost per leads. They're going to pay a lot more. So what you want to do is balance that out. Hopefully, around the holiday season, your inventory will be in less demand. You'll have some opportunities that you could price it accordingly and help them hit their goals by the end of the year. Really, that's what we got to take that in consideration right now. It's not just about the money. It's about helping everybody and not just the bottom line.
Thanks, Jeff. Dan?
It's a fine balance, though, because, as a media team, our KPI is to get the most return for that space. No different than a lot of the performance brands that are trying to get the best cost per acquisition possible, right? They have to follow their trends. We have to follow our trends. So there is definitely a balance of trying to save some space and some time for the folks that are on air that often with you. But it's also a matter of shifting some of the perspective. Some of those, instead of being on 52 weeks out of the year, how can you be smarter about the weeks that you are on air? And based on the rates and things like that are increasing, we're working with several folks on replacing that increased rate with innovation. So for years, where traditional performance brands, the cost of addressability or the cost of targeting, things like that was a little cost prohibitive for that, cost per acquisition and stuff. Now, when you start weighing that against the increased rate, maybe some limited weeks, now's the time to be smarter. You got to hone in on really who was it that was driving your calls and your leads, and then figure out, okay, how can we spend the time and the money correctly to reach those folks? So instead of worrying about reaching the masses, it's really about being very honed in. And now's the time for performance brands to, perhaps lean a little bit more into some of the tech.
And I think that's going to be a big theme as well. It's just the agility and migrating with the audience as well, and not just focusing on the linear eyeballs, but really following the consumers where they go. Sean?
That's exactly right. I would say that the marketing dollars, particularly from the performance side, really flow like water, right? They're going to find the impressions and the efficiency where it lies. You know, coming back off of the comments that we just had about the upfront, the marketplace is futures market. You have marketers, and we have to look at it in a macro view. You have auto manufacturers who have short supply. That supply is sitting on the sidelines. That's going to come in over the next 4 quarters. We know that. The cars are built. They're just waiting for chips, right? We know that next year is going to be a political marketplace, so that's going to put additional pressure on inventory. So what we've done is, again, going back to the point about where the eyeballs are, and to Dan's point about the technology, we've looked at how our team is built and collapsed that so that we're no longer just holding inventory on the side and finding out the last bit of dollars to fill every impression, right? That's still a goal, that we want to fill every impression. But in how we're pricing out the inventory, where that inventory is available, everybody in this room, if you wanted to transact with one of our 3 companies and say, you know what, I have money for fourth quarter 2022, any one of us will negotiate that deal, right? So there's no inability to buy the inventory that you want when it's available. But we have to sell to all of our partners across the portfolio, both national, mid-market, and in the performance space. So we have to look for the technology and the availability of inventory to connect those audiences with the marketers and the marketers with the audiences where that lies. And we want to rely on our partners that helped us to make it through last year, right? When the inventory and demand were disaligned. We had massive amounts of inventory. The national marketers had pulled back, and it was the performance brands that helped us make it through. Now we have to Dan's point, marry that technology to find and hone in on that audience and find them where they're available with the available inventory.
That's great. Okay. Well, thinking about this a little further, who's doing it really well? And you don't have to mention names, but give us examples of like a marketer in the performance area and how they're doing it, what they're doing, how they're navigating through these challenging waters. Start with you.
I would say the categories that have found the delicate balance between branding and then getting that performance metric, and those that have leaned into understanding that 800 numbers are a part of your performance metric. It is understanding how IP is delivering, right? How digital, what you're placing on Facebook and Google, where that falls in the funnel, and the folks that are marrying the newer technology to the traditional performance metrics. Those agencies and those brands that are leaning into new technologies and becoming more diversified in their execution methodology, those are the folks that are doing it well.
So a follow-up for that, and then we'll go back. But elaborate on that a little more in terms of the specifics of what tactics are they taking and utilizing to actually make that work.
They're closing.
And you get a lot into changing KPIs.
Yeah.
A lot of our DR advertisers are being asked to shift our traditional CPO KPI into something more toward audience reach and frequency in other areas and elongate our expectations around response. So I'm curious what your successful partners are doing.
The successful partners are the ones who are communicating the KPI at the onset of the campaign planning cycle, right? A lot of times, I'll tell you, and I'll pull back the name, we were talking to an agency who would run a campaign in our advanced television solution set. And one of the first piece of feedback we got was, well, it wasn't working because our click-through was low. And we said, well, it's OTT and CTV, so that's running on the big screen, right? So there's not going to be a click-through methodology that you can apply to the success of this campaign. And once we level set on what the expectation should be, and some of that falls on us as marketers, as brand partners, to also communicate what the capabilities are, right? But once we level set and everybody understands what the KPIs are, what the sales cycle should look like, what the attribution window should be, and we are in agreement and understanding what the media is set to perform as, then we can really make sure that we're reading those KPIs and setting you up for success as an agency, because we have to know that we're going to equip you with a post-campaign report that you have to then go and explain to your advertising client.
Yep, we get them. Yeah. Dan, you want to answer the first part, which is really what are some of the ones who are successful, how are they doing? How are they navigating? What are some examples?
For us, I'd say in the past year and a half, we've definitely seen a growth in the D2C space within some of the personal hygiene and apparel that have been smart to utilize like the OTT space. So going away from the tried and true TV model and actually trying and embracing the OTT without a sling, which, you know, we get it, it's new and it's always risky kind of trying something different. But we have several advertisers that found success with that, and then taking that success and the viewership that they found there, and then mirroring that back onto the TV on the traditional side of our linear business. So, I mean, those are the brands and strategy, I would say, that are, it's not, and they're also leaning to things like pixel tracking. So, which allows the attribution to go beyond perhaps just the agency. Mm-hmm. This is, something that, like a relationship that, we can tie directly to their website and do a third party to go beyond just whatever they're currently using.
And a quick follow-up to that, how are you as a media entity partnering with agencies to communicate with all of that and coordinate everything from a logistics standpoint with the clients?
Well, I mean, we stay pretty agnostic. Like, how does the client want to do it? Do you want, can we empower the agency and feed their engine? In some ways, we'll strike data deals with that agency, tied to viewership, tied to ad exposure. Or we'll help set up the bridge between that agency and a third party, whether it's a mobile tracking company or a pixel tracking company. We can help be that bridge in order to make sure that what we're sharing is protected, and then what the client is getting is being provided in a way that we're actually getting the credit for not only the exposure but then the traffic.
And are you finding that, this is obviously agency-centric from my perspective, but are you finding agencies are interested in bringing you into client meetings and really embracing you as a partner on their behalf?
I would say that's probably, especially within the performance world, one of the biggest shifts we're seeing. Mm-hmm. Allowing us to be partners. We have our agency partners that we love, and we want to see that continue. We understand the ecosystem, and we want it to keep it that way. So the folks that are embracing the fact that we are a partner, we're not trying to work direct to the client, we want to all coexist and take place at events like this. It is helping, because then we get to answer the questions and the fears all at the same time.
And it's a mixed bag. Sometimes you have agencies who are out of their school in terms of what they even know and how to answer the questions. So having you there as the SME is a big deal to be able to answer those questions with authority. And
that's being honest, right?
Yeah.
It's being honest with the fact that, yes, you know what, you really do understand everything, in the TV space, in the linear world that, perhaps there was 15, 20 years of experience, or more at the agency doing it. You know it, we get it. But there's a lot of new things right now. CTV, it blew up, obviously, accelerated over this last year and a half. So there's learnings and things that have taken place in the last year that, unless you're really in there day to day, you're just not going to get exposed to it. I'm working in the addressable space now 10 years. And there's something new learned or some new tech every quarter. It's kind of wild. And again, I'm immersed in it. So if you're not, you got to be willing to say that you don't understand it, and that you're, again, that's where partnerships come in. If you trust the network groups and the sales teams that you're working with, they're going to help you as an agency look smarter.
I have a follow-up, but let's go to Jeff, and we'll come back to that.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys have said. We've noticed and had quite a bit of meetings with clients and direct clients and the agencies and whatnot. Everybody wants us to be on the same page, one common goal. What is the strategy? They want to hear, what do you have to offer? The client's very much in tune to what the agency's doing, but they want to hear what we're doing as well. A great example in terms of an advertiser or category, I think, is insurance. What I've noticed, this past year, or even the last couple of years, is certain insurance companies, they'll play in all the markets. So they'll lay a base buy down in the upfront. They'll come in with a hybrid DR, which is basically just buying impressions and negotiating a CPM, flexible terms, 72-hour cancel policy. And then they come in with their traditional DR call to action messages on top of that. So they have it all layered accordingly, and it works. And I think what you need to do in order to be successful is you have to have the conversations with the agency. What are your goals? How many leads do you need? Because it's very tough right now to get a campaign to work and just rely on 800 numbers. You know, you have people who see the ads, and they immediately look at their phone. You know, they look at, you know, what is this product? I'm going to investigate it before I buy it. But they may not necessarily go back to that 800 number that they saw on TV. They may buy it online, you know? So how does the network get that credit for that spot that they, you know, bought the product online? So I think it's really important that you have those conversations in terms of goals. Some are unrealistic, some are realistic. And I think the communication's the key, you know, and this goes down the line. You know, in our department, in our sales department, everybody's involved. Even our coordinators are having those questions. They ask, well, why isn't it working? Or what, you know, what can we do to help you guys? You know, we have all hands on deck when it comes to our traditional DR campaigns, because you just don't know if they're going to work or not like they have in the past. You're up against a lot, you know. Call centers, for example, right now, they're having an issue with staffing. So they may be getting the calls, but they're not converting over to deals, you know? So there's a lot of that going on too. So I think communication by far with the agency is super vital. And, you know, as we mentioned, you want to know what those goals are. And not necessarily, there's times that the agency won't even tell you that the client has, you know, lowered their expectations or their goals. And that really hurts you, you know? And you don't want to find out when you get that cancel. You know, you want to be prepared and have a game plan so you prevent the cancels.
Yeah, there's a lot of different paths we can take this conversation. One is, it's a little dangerous, but I'll just bring it up anyway. And that's really the transparency between the relationship from agency and vendor that forever has been a little bit of sandbagging on both sides. Mm-hmm. So what you're asking really is, and what I'm hearing a lot from you guys, is the more transparent both sides can be, the more trust we can have, the more value we're going to equate to driving toward the bottom line. And I know that's not a question, but it's a lot of what we're hearing. The one thing I want to follow up with, and specifically, Dan, we'll start with you, and then Sean. A lot of the measurement that you're asking us to do as agencies or marketers with you as a vendor is in kind of an encased ecosystem, and yet not all of our investments are with you. So they could be with Sean, or they could be with Jeff, or they could be with partner XYZ and ABC. How are you working with other vendors to help agencies and clients navigate that entire ecosystem?
For us, I mean, any kind of like attribution study or analysis that we're going to do on our platform, we'll always do a holdout, knowing the fact that, okay, to your point, everybody in our footprint has that same likelihood of being exposed on Sean's platform or Jeff's. You know, like they have that opportunity. So what do we know and be consistent with is that holdout group, right? So we know you're in target and we're going to make sure you don't see our portion of that campaign. And the other folks that we do know saw that portion of the campaign, we use those two to really, you know, figure out the attribution within ours. Because all things considered, all the other exposures were the same. How that then feeds in, again, we'll work with agencies on our viewership data, or we'll work with them like on a reach extension vehicle where if we don't have to use iSpot data to know, you know, say who in our households were exposed, if we can work with the agency partners to get, hey, this is what our national schedules are looking like, then we can overlay that to our viewership data and know, okay, these are the folks within that demo that we have that you're missing by, you know, when you do buy Sean's product or, you know, whatever kind of national thing you're buying. So there's different ways to work with the agencies to try to figure out how we fit into it. And then there's third-party folks that are definitely trying to piece it all together, but you know, that is where the agency will come in. All right, you take our piece, you take whatever you're doing on the digital side to, you know, increasingly what you'll be doing on the mobile side, and be able to, you know, work with third-party data folks to figure out, okay, where's the duplication? What was the, you know, like from a unique reach standpoint, how do we flush that out? And then attribute the right amount or the proportionate amount of success to each of those buckets that you're working in. Because the last touch, that's the hard thing right now. All right, everyone's getting exposed on all these different things, from your TV to your phone to your computer. Like, who gets the credit? So that's still the golden, I'd say, grail that we're trying to solve for, that it's not there yet.
Thanks, Dan. Sean?
NBC has been really leaning into answering that question and asking the right questions about traditional models and the vendors that have had a long stronghold on television measurement, right? And what we've been doing, our approach has been to really listen to you all, the agencies and clients that are contracting and working with vendors who are solving your specific problems. My time at Dish really taught me that there are different measurement solutions and data partners that are specialized by vertical, for the auto industry, for pharma, for packaged goods, for big box stores. They all play a part in the marketplace. And what NBC has done is really put an RFP out to the marketplace, agencies and clients alike, to say, who are you all engaged with? We want to hear from you all, and we're currently in that process. So I can't go into specifics about who we're engaging, but do know there's been a broad RFP with almost every major player in the marketplace to answer exactly that question. How do we measure audience? How do we measure engagement? How do we really look at attribution and make sure that NBC is getting our credit, but your investment is when you're closing the cycle, you're understanding what's working and efficient. You know, probably, you know, subconsciously you referred to the industry as DR a moment ago. We've moved beyond that. We're really looking, and I know you have the same sort of perspective from our prep calls, but we really are in the performance market space, right? For the duration of our careers, I've benefited from talking to agencies candidly about the performance metrics and really opening up the books. You're saying you're not getting the calls? Let me understand what's not working. And sometimes it's a simple understanding that it's the wrong day parts, right? We have a slew of networks broken up by genre that you may not be thinking, well, CNBC is not working. What about MS? What about our digital properties? What about OTT to reach that same audience? So we want to find those answers, but we want to make sure that the measurements there on the back end to help us to close the loop to understand that you're seeing what we're seeing, and there's symbiotic relationship between our two measurement and attribution models.
So we're in the performance space, and sales are the KPI for most of our clients, or leads, whatever, a transaction of some sort of an action. And a lot of this evolution that advertising agencies, marketers are being asked to do is really diversify your portfolio outside of linear. And let's take a step back. I'm a traditional DR product. I'm ready to test. I'm ready to go on TV and see if this thing's going to fly or not. I'm going to run a 2-week test, maybe 4 weeks at the most, and probably day 3 or 4, I'm going to know if this thing's going well or not. In this new paradigm that you're describing, that same traditional DR marketer is going to be asked, okay, put a couple bucks here in linear, but also put some money in OTT if you want to really get your audience. And it's probably going to be a 1-month schedule, not a 1-week schedule. And you're not going to really know how it's doing until probably after the whole month. And maybe if you're looking at view through, not just last click, you know, you're probably looking at a 2-week window after the campaign's over. So now you're into week 6, and you're going to need to start month 2 with your spend before you're going to know how it's doing in week 6. So now I'm basically 2 months of spend in on linear and digital versus my traditional model, which is 2 to 4 weeks of linear only. And I'm not really going to know how it's doing for about 6 weeks. That's a lot to ask of a traditional marketer. What advice would you give them? We'll start with Jeff, actually, and let's go back.
Well, share your strategy and your goals, you know, and work with the networks and see if it could be done, you know. I mean, you got to be, the key here is communication. You know, you got to know exactly what's working, what's not. If something's not working and you can track it, then you got to pull it, you know. You shouldn't have to wait 6 weeks to see what your results are going to be. You should have a pretty good idea up front, you know, whether you're going down the right road or not, you know. So I just think it's you know, a combination of the communication and trial and error. You know, OTT is in its infancy stage. There's a lot of unknowns still in that space, you know. I'm still learning quite a bit about it. I can't, you know, compare, you know, what he might have to offer versus him. I'm learning too. So I just think, you know, you got to watch it closely and just make changes when you feel as though you need to make a change, and don't let it get out of control.
I mean, it does require a bit of a leap of faith. I mean, it's a mixture of knowing that the different properties do work. right? I think we've proven over the years that TV advertising works. So now the changes that we're asking you to make are made in the evolution of TV, OTT and CTV, and even some of the digital. A lot of it, it's still TV, it's just TV being consumed differently. So because of the way it's changing in that way, the outcomes can't be the same either, in that same time frame. People's viewing habits are changed. And, I've had a couple of conversations already, this week in regards to, I have 3 kids, a couple in high school. Their viewing habits, you look at it like, no, these viewing habits are changed probably for good. In the way that they do consume and how much they consume and so forth. So, yeah, like that leap of faith is the evolution of, okay, I have to trust the fact that this entity has worked for a long time, and now that it's evolving, I'm going to evolve with it. And with that, that means I'm not going to have results day 5. It's going to take, it should be taking 6 weeks. I mean, you should have a little bit more of an impact prior to that. But yes, 2-3 weeks, yeah. Like you should be giving it at least that before kind of, fluctuating or trying to change and move things around. Just because, again, the viewing behaviors in those 3 weeks can be so different. What time of year is it? What's going on? Is it, is there a sporting event taking place? Is it premiere week? Like, there's just so many things that can impact right now and change week to week someone's consumption.
You'd almost want them to wait 6 weeks because there's a lot of options out there to view, what you want to watch. You go back 5 years ago, there wasn't. Look at the Diginet space, for example. That's our space, the MeTVs and whatnot, the over-the-air networks that have launched over the last 10 years. There's quite a few of them. And you have viewers now that are watching these religiously. You have people on their phones watching Netflix or whatever. How many smart TVs do you have? I mean, there's so many options available out there now to watch your content. I think you need not only do you need to, I use trial and error, but you got to give it time, and see where's this campaign destined to do well at, and then stick with that. And you're just gonna need time in order to figure that out.
And to that transparency, who have we worked with in that space? Like, whatever your client or your brand is, have we worked with a competitor or a like-minded product? What were the learnings, that we can share from a white label kind of perspective where we're not divulging secrets or anything like that, but just, again, we want them to succeed, but we also want you to succeed. So we're going to point you into a direction that's going to, mirror their success. Like whether that's a length of time, whether it's a mix of media, whether it's, even down to frequency and things like that. Odds are we've probably worked with a brand that's similar to yours. So tap into that knowledge, work on that partnership, and keeping that transparency helps assure, like when you're making that leap of faith, that, hey, okay, 2 to 3 weeks from now, instead of 2 to 3 days from now,
Yeah.
I'm going to start seeing it, or at least I'll start catching up, and then in that next, weeks 4 through 6, okay, I did ease it into what we expected to be at by this point.
Yeah, I would focus on the ease, right? Easing into things, more of a broad step than a leap, because there are so many learnings. Advanced TV is not new. OTT, it's newer for the performance space, but to your point, we launched Sling back in 2015, right? So these are evolving technologies that, thank God, we have these available to us as solutions in the performance space, right? One of the things that attracted me to NBC was the breadth of the content, but also the solutions that we have available to performance marketers. Gone are the days that we'll say to performance space, you can't buy the Super Bowl or the Olympics or any of these larger tentpole events that we have available to engage audiences. But then again, how we're delivering that, the methodology, it's not mutually exclusive. We're not gonna say there's one solution, one approach to the market to solve your problem. It is about, if you're 100% sure that our linear performance is gonna work for you, we'll invest that. But then we'll test digital. We'll introduce these other solution sets and test and learn and reinvest test, and learn, right? So nobody's saying that you're not going to be able to invest in linear business. Linear avails will be there, right? It's just incumbent upon us to make sure that as the market shifts and we're preparing for scarcity, that we have solutions on deck so that you're not locked out of ways to engage an audience.
It's helpful. Jeff, a lot of the DR performance media goes your way. And I'm thinking about this conversation, and I'm putting myself in one of my clients' perspectives, thinking, you guys are out of your minds. You know, we're not a hybrid brand. We're not living on a URL. We're living on call centers. We're living on, our bread and butter is made every time someone answers the phone. And if you can't tell me that I need to staff up or staff down, and you can't help me manage the call volume, and I just invested everything I have in making sure there's going to be 30 people ready to answer that call when they need to, and I have 2 phone calls. What's going on, guys? I need help. This is a guy who's calling the next day the campaign starts, not in 3, 4, 5 days or 3 weeks. It's day 1, it's day 2. And yeah, maybe these are an archaic example of marketers that are going to need to evolve, but they're in our space today, and they're part of our community, and they are a big part of our community. So I'm curious how you guys are navigating that and what advice you would give them.
So the first thing is I would challenge a little bit, right? If they're only doing performance TV and they're not doing any mobile, search is not a part of their mix, then maybe there's something there. There's only the 800 numbers driving their KPIs. But chances are they have some SEO. Chances are they're doing some Facebook, right? They're doing some other sort of social, digital engagement. So why don't we take the learnings from there and find out how we cross that hybrid model with digital, mobile, social, right? There are learnings that we can take from some of these walled gardens where they are engaging and reinvesting and saying, well, the 800 number doesn't work anymore, but if you look at the web traffic, there's something there. To what Dan had said earlier and Jeff had said as well, there's this final touch attribution where we know the TV model is contributing to driving that consumer, potential consumer, to get on their cell phone, to get on the laptop and search the product because I saw the ad on TV. So we have to close that loop. Chances are that marketer is not living and dying solely on 800 numbers.
And the big part, and you said evolve. You know, I joked even earlier about don't be the Walkman, right? I mean, you got to have a great product and a good system that has worked for you for years, but that doesn't mean it's going to continue to work. And now more so than ever, you need to be able to look at how consumers are behaving and adapt. You got to evolve with their thing. And you know, the last year and a half, we were we were forced to evolve very quickly, very differently. You know, expectations of how people were going to consume TV and what media meant to them. And I mean, even digital media becoming how we all doubled our meeting count in the last year, right? So like you have to evolve in order to be, and as media companies, our job, you know, to our own companies, to our stakeholders, is to evolve and do better as well. So, you know, yeah, there is an expectation that try something different. So if it's not a call center, maybe it is a website, you know, which might be a little bit more manageable, you know, in order to create leads and then draft off of that. Because I understand staffing is an issue, but then there's also things now, call centers don't have to necessarily be in a warehouse somewhere, right? They could be working from home. Our call centers, Dish has got several across the U.S., and, you know, we went to work from home. It can be done, so there were cost savings on that. So there are ways to maintain and be dependent on, say, a 1-800, but yet still evolve in order for the KPIs or the, you know, the cost to maybe fluctuate in order to then allow for a 2 or 3 week runway, or perhaps shift some costs into different kind of technologies, whether it's websites or, you know, pixel trackings and mobile and social. You got to evolve.
Thanks, Dan. Jeff?
Yeah, I agree with everything the guy said. Really, the thing that I'm concerned about You know, look, we participate in all the markets, upfront, scatter, hybrid DR, and the one market that we're having a really tough time with is traditional DR because, you know, I've been doing it for a long time, and I remember the days of long form and even, you know, the 2-minute campaigns that were very successful. You know, you had more than enough leads coming in to make a campaign work, and now, you know, I know the call volume is there. You know, we're being told the call volume is there, but they're not converting over. Okay, question is why? You know, when are they converting over? Are they converting over, you know, later in the day? You know, or you know, if one of our networks has brought in 1,000 leads, and you know, say there's, you know, 400 sales out of that, how do you get credit for all 400 from that same 800 number? You know, that network get credit for the 800 number. You know, do we get any credit from the web? Do we get any credit from anywhere else? You know, and then again, you have a lot of inventory out there that the DR community buys. So how do you know that your spot that you ran on your network didn't run at the same time it ran elsewhere in the marketplace? You know, so if the leads are up on the web hits, how do you get credit for it? You know, that's where I think, you know, we're going to run into some issues in the future. I really am concerned about it.
Especially when it's not a vanity number, where if it's a network by network number, because again, okay, I saw the ad last night. What was it? I forget. You Google it, up comes the company, and now that 1-800 might be the vanity, or it might be this. So it's like, okay, how do you track that? Because again, even though we might be sitting there with our phone in hand watching TV, we're not necessarily doing it right then and there. Because we're probably already checking our fantasy team, or you know, scrolling through Facebook or Instagram and so forth. It's already kind of being used for one of the million other things that the phone is being used for. But the TV is on, we're seeing it, and then okay, you know what? I'm on the way to work, or you know, got some downtime. Then I go to do it. Then I pick up my phone to do it, and it's like, oh wait, nope. Yep, here goes search. So,
I mean, I've seen quite a few creatives of recent. Now, granted, they all have their web address in there at some point, but telling the viewer to not only call but go online and buy. I've seen them recently, and to me, I'm going, okay, why would I want to run that if I'm not going to get full credit for the sale that they're gonna make? You know. So my question, Matt, maybe you can help us with that. What are you guys doing on the agency side to give us credit for those leads that are coming in on the web? You know, then you know TV's driving them there.
Yeah, it's a traditional attribution question. You know, web attribution, how are we calculating it, and also how are we communicating it to our partners?
Right.
So sometimes it goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, is that whole transparency between vendor and client and even the agency in between. Sometimes our clients have that data. They're sitting on the web data, and we have to really encourage them to have as much transparency with us as possible, so that we're not just looking at a TV-based MER, or a phone-based MER. We're looking at all different avenues or entry points and where the commerce is coming from, and looking at it holistically. Similarly, I think we continue to partner with the media and share that information, and I'm sure we sandbag a little like everyone, and we need to be better at being transparent with you guys too. This is what we're seeing. This is our total ability from an allowable standpoint to really pay out, and that could help from a negotiation standpoint. And like you, the economics of your role to get as much money for each unit as you possibly can, it's our job to help pay as little for that inventory as possible. So there's a natural dichotomy there that, you know, is going to create some challenges, but I think as we continue to evolve, speaking to Dan's message today, I think that's one we can all hear real loud and clear. We all need to evolve. The market's changing. It's not just marketers that are living in traditional spaces. It's ones that are in the hybrid space. They're being affected by this too. Ones that are really on the general side are being affected by it. The agencies are being affected by it. The media is too. So it's really for all of us to try to figure out what our next steps are. But I would say the biggest challenge opportunity is investing in attribution and understanding the entire picture. So if it's a client that has their own DMP or a data management platform or a CDP, you know, somewhere where they're holistically looking at all of the frequency across all the different partners, going back to our other question, that's pivotal, or us as an agency investing in that kind of third-party data management and really helping to paint the picture for our clients is critical. But also to understand it better and to be able to share it with our media partners so that you guys, we can come to you and say, hey, frequency on this is a little high, on this is a little low. This audience needs to be stretched a little more, and we're willing to pay a little more for it, or vice versa. So I'm not supposed to answer questions. I'm supposed to be the one asking. So I think we have a little more time. I did want to ask you guys, and this is a 2-year-old question that I'm just re-asking again.
Clarify, question for a 2-year-old or the?
No, yeah, good question. That was ambiguous of me. I apologize. A question that anyone could have
You
asked
said
2 years ago.
KPIs on the front end.
Yeah, yes, well done. We want to understand, going back to traditional marketer, spending money in linear. I spend $1 on linear TV, that eyeball is worth X. In your opinion, that same eyeball on connected TV, is that worth the same as linear, but more or less? And what are the variables that adjust your answer?
The variable that would adjust my answer is based around the target, demo, and the other attributes, right? So I would say, for example, the person let's say it's a kid's product. Reaching that person on digital is probably going to be a little bit easier, or OTT, than traditional linear, right? So it's about the difficulty in engaging that final 20% of your targeted audience. The more difficult it is, the more you should expect to pay in a CPM model, right? You're always going to look for that last bit of hard-to-reach audience and figure out how to reach them, and based around scarcity as well, right? So we were just talking, I had a lunch earlier today where we were talking about, well, what sort of demos are you selling on and guaranteeing on your national side? And what we're seeing is people coming to market with a much broader demo reach and saying, listen, for my traditional linear, P2+.
Yep.
As I get into OTT, as I get into digital, right, then I'm probably going to be a little bit more targeted with my social, with my OTT CTV, and programmatic especially, right? So it's a mixture of the two. You know, not to give you a broad answer.
It's fair.
But I think when you're approaching all of the other, like if you came to me and gave me a spec sheet with the brand, you know, what the rest of their media mix looks like, who their targeted audience is, then all of that would inform my answer.
It's a complicated question. It's a complicated answer. So I wasn't expecting a single one. Yeah, it's okay.
I agree.
Dan?
Yeah, I mean, ideally you'd want to say that that adult 25-54 1X is 1X there, whether it's linear to CTV. But to Sean's point, what else is it about that adult 25-54? Do they have to be a homeowner? Do they do this? Do they do that? Like how down the funnel are you trying to get? And if you're not reaching them on TV and you're reaching them in this other space, yes, there's a cost to doing or to reaching such a specific target. But the other thing that drives the 2X or the 3X on the OTT or CTV space, definitely gets driven a lot by programmatic, because now you're in a platform that's not just competing with television advertisers, you're competing with digital-only advertisers. There's a lot of folks, like video, digital advertisers that are strictly on, digital platforms. And now programmatic allows them to come into the living room, and instead of just being on, short-form content online, now all of a sudden they have a 30-second spot that's taking place on Monday Night Football. So, they're liking that, and it's helping. They don't necessarily maybe have the ability to do a national TV campaign, but when it comes to impression-based buying in the digital world, they can do that. So that applies the pressure in that space. To the earlier point, the more pressure that gets put on on the inventory, obviously the rate of that inventory gets impacted.
Fair. Jeff?
No, I agree with what these guys said. And honestly, I think it's up to the marketer, what that value is. You pay for what you want, pay for what you get. I'll just use MeTV for an example. You want adult diapers, then advertise on MeTV, you're going to pay a lot more for it. But you're going to get your audience, So that's the true value, Who's your target, and go after that. And you have a lot of options now that you could single out and find those impressions. And Sean's right. There's been quite a few negotiations that took place this year where advertisers are changing their mix and their demos and whatnot, slowly getting away from women 25-54, adult 25-54, and into the 2+, 35+, 25+. We've seen a lot of that, and I think that trend's going to continue in the next few years too.
But some of that wasn't voluntary.
Right.
Like, that was necessarily driven by the brand.
Yep.
So so there's upside again, like to go into the CTV route or some of the targeted route. If you really do know that it really is the 18 to 34-year-old that you needed,
Right.
You still do have to go find that 18 to 34-year-old then. And there will be avenues to do that, and again, different reach products to do so.
But I think the expectation and the burden on TV is a little bit different than the rest of the marketplace. And that's also why there's going to be a premium rate attached to television. It's premium IP, all right? I'm still going to argue that a show on Bravo, highly produced, high-quality content, is much more valuable than that similar impression if it's me playing with my dog on YouTube, right? You shouldn't expect to pay the same. That's different sort of content. The brand safety that you get with television. Again, with the complexity, I am really invigorated and excited about the breadth of solutions we have to offer the marketplace, because where would we be if we didn't have advanced TV solutions, if OTT hadn't come to bear and there's still this massive reduction? When I got into the provider space, we were growing hand over fist. Subs were growing. Early in my career when I was at Turner and Viacom, how many subs we have this year? And the number always went in the same direction until it didn't, right? So as marketplace started to shift, and think about where we were 5 years ago, we'd be talking about, well, how are we going to battle the eyeballs that are going to Netflix, and that's non-ad supported? We have advanced TV ad-supported solutions that we're able to say to our marketers, I can get you the audience, and I'm not only pushing you into OTT and CTV, I still have traditional linear, but I have solutions to engage your audience today and the audience you're going to be trying to reach tomorrow, because guess what? Baby boomers are still massively important, and they have the biggest consumption of any generation in the country. And then there's the sandwich generation, which is a lot of us in this room. And then you have Gen Y and Gen Z that are coming in scale, but they don't spend a lot of money just yet. But we can see where the consumption patterns are for that generation and that age group, and we can plan for that.
That's great. Thank you. Tom, are we good on time, or do you want to ask any questions for the group? I wasn't sure. Yeah, I think we can go to the audience with a couple of minutes.
Thanks, Matt. Actually, this question is for you as agency.
I'm not allowed to answer questions.
So as you know, we're in the integrated direct marketing space. We're the vendor. We love talking to clients with the agency as partner. You just talked about transparency between agency and vendor and client. How do you as agency feel like that trend is moving? Are you being more open to letting vendors talk with you with clients, or do you still need to kind of put that protective barrier?
It's a great question, and it's one where we are evolving. And I think being at home for the last 2 years hasn't helped. I think it'll be great when we can get out in person and be together and invite you guys to meetings with our clients and feel more like we have partners in the room, as opposed to the distance of being in two different virtual environments has been challenging, I think, in that paradigm. So it's a challenge for us to really evolve and continue to grow in that direction. It's a long roundabout way of saying we're not there yet. I think we have a long way to go, but we're trying. And I would migrate that question over to the guys and say, are you guys prepared for us to bring you into meetings? Do you have the resources for us to start bringing you in and into a lot more meetings than you're currently coming in?
100%.
Absolutely.
I mean, like that's, our preference is that. I mean, like, we even have a client vertical team now, specifically just going to the clients where they won't necessarily get the wall, because their job is to not worry about that lane. They need to go speak to clients. So yes, we would welcome that with open arms.
We're actually structured in a way that we're designed to engage clients and agencies and be good stewards of each relationship with great deal of respect to the agency of record, right? So what we did late last year was collapse our two groups that were direct to scale and performance and brought that into one group, right? So I work with my counterpart, Scott Berger, whose primary focus is to deal with clients directly, but always in that conversation is how are we engaging with the agency? What are the expectations? How's the business performing? We have the same goal. And again, if we violate that relationship and step outside of those bounds, the agency would let us know very quickly, right? We have to recognize they're still the stewards of the RFP and the buy, right? So we play very nicely in that space, but luckily enough, at our scale, a company the size of NBC, we're trusted with that sort of relationship, and it's incumbent upon us to be good stewards of each side.
An agency's got multiple brands. We're not going to end around to go to one brand at the cost of, the agency saying, okay, the other 5 are going away. So like we'll always do that with, with partnership in mind.
Thanks, guys.
I just want to bring a comment. I am from Latin America Ethnic TV, and I have seen that I have now a few clients that after the pandemic, everyone have been more related to QR codes. And each time it's appearing more QR codes in the TV spots that helps to have a better response. And you can create from that QR code a lead, a phone call, whatever you want. And I think that it's not using well for most of the clients. And I think that part of the new technology, the new use of the people, it's to include a lot more in the TV QR codes with call to actions, with response that we really want to do. And we are not using that enough.
I'll take that. I know I'm not supposed to touch on these ones, but almost 10 years ago, on the general side of the business, I was working with UGG, the Deckers Corporation, and our folks in the Boston area will love this. We did a big thing with Tom Brady and giant tall walls on the East Coast, and there are QR codes because we created these really cool movies with the agency, and it totally bombed. Like a lot of eyeballs, great impact, but the actual engagement with the QR code was dismal. And there was just poor adoption of that tech. And it's a great point. What we're seeing is everyone is a lot more adapted to that technology. We're all going to restaurants. They're here at their restaurants here. Like if you want to see a menu, you're using a QR code. We all get it. We're using it more. So we have a lot of clients who are testing QR codes now, and we're really excited about that as a CTA vehicle. From a tracking attribution standpoint, from a measurement standpoint, we're still not fully convinced that it is as effective as some of the other paths that we've done. So we're still testing it, I would say, but we're excited about it.
We've seen an increase of folks using it, and quite honestly, I don't know why more wouldn't. Again, I mean, coming out of this last year and a half, you want a menu, you want anything, it's QR code. And now it's no longer a QR code app. It's just your camera.
Yeah.
Like that's a technology that evolved quickly and is at a point now. And the good thing, again, when you're watching TV, I said it earlier, your phone's usually in your hand. To hit pause and do that quick capture, you're going to have that information, and now you have it in your URL, and you can get back to it at any point in time whenever you're going to go do anything. And then also collect first-party data. It's a great tool for that.
Yeah, we've actually leaned into a solution that's shoppable, and that's something that our group has delved into. We've found great success in the space. But again, it relies on an investment for that sort of metric, some transparency with the agency, and willingness from the client to share back-end performance with us. Again, I don't think the full industry is there yet. I think there could be a lot more utilization of QR codes, but they're having their second coming, and I think we're not going to see them go away anytime soon.
Right, I agree.
We're going to take 2 more.
You mentioned the aging baby boomer population that's wealthy, still buys a lot of products. We market products to seniors over 75 years of age, and we know there's targeted TV stations that we advertise on, but what other advice do you have for going after that real aging demographic?
I think it's a mixture of, again, the content and the delivery mechanism. So certainly, we have a network, Cozy, that does very well because it's nostalgia TV, and that does very well with the 75 plus. I would say really starting at 65 plus. WeTV, similar sort of audience. But it's going to be the content, but I don't think it's fair to put that, to approach that demo in a very homogenistic. The age doesn't make you uniform. It's really about the kind of content that you consume and how you consume it. I know anecdotes don't go very far, but my father's above 75. He's a cord cutter, right? Will beat me up for my my Peacock password if he can't watch his European football on a Saturday. So he's in that demographic where you would say he's significantly older for an OTT consumer, but it's second nature to him now, right? So how he consumes, very different than a lot of his peers, but they're coming along.
Yeah, I think the other way you can target them, you know, obviously they make up a huge spending in this country. A lot of them have fixed incomes too. And as you mentioned, cutting the cord, you know, target networks that focus on over-the-air, you know, the over-the-air networks. There's quite a, you know, what we see with our network group, we're definitely a broadcast network, so we're available over the air. We get quite a few viewers that email us that are in that demographic that you mentioned, thanking us for being available over the air because, you know, they don't have cable or satellite or any of that. So I think, you know, if you continue to pursue them over the air, that number is going to continue to grow, and it has annually for quite some time now.
With a target like that, we're working with advertisers based on the viewership data. You do know that you have certain networks that your core loves and consuming, hence why you're buying them nationally, and you probably have a good foothold there. But where else are they going? So that's what we tap into as an operator. We get to follow that viewer when they go, whether it's they're watching something with the grandkids or the kids, or quite honestly just watching, you know, some of today's stuff just so that they can have the conversation with the grandkids and stuff. You know, my folks would definitely be in that set. You know, they have their TV that they enjoy, but then they also have the shows that they'll watch so that they can, you know, talk Big Brother with my kids, or I like some of these different things. And it's just, so follow the viewership, right? You tap into it, obviously stay anchored to those networks that you know have it, but then tap into different ways to follow them outside of those.
What growth are you seeing in interactive advertising, and what's the future for interactive advertising?
Interactive, like click, like advertising, click and go into something? Okay. Interactive TV for us, like 10 years ago, was like this big thing, and we had a team dedicated to it and so forth. I don't think there's any quarterly meeting where I don't say that we maybe lightened up on it too soon, because the idea was before the tech, right? Like we just said, QR codes and how quick and easy it is to do that. Some folks are still doing the ITV, but not like we definitely not enough to kind of sustain a division of our team and our business right now. There's iterations of it, and I think it will evolve from QR codes to, you know, shopping carts and being able to load things in different ways. It's also a little double-edged because of the fact that if you're doing an interactive ad, you could be taking somebody away from the content that they're watching, right? And you're taking them away from the experience that, you know, us media companies benefit from and generate revenue from. They leave that experience to go do something, and then when they come back, did we bring them back into the right, you know, time? Did they miss any of the program that they were watching? If they did, they get annoyed. They don't necessarily get annoyed at the brand. They're going to call us. Hey, I just missed, you know, 3 minutes of such and such show. So I definitely think that it's part of the evolution. It's a product there's better tech now than there was 10 years ago when we were really doing it. And it was also very expensive at the time. There were third-party vendors and stuff that were charging, you know, 6 figures to do a landing page, and with some interactivity to it, that's changed and evolved. So right now, I definitely don't see a boom, but it's not dead. It's not going away.
It's not dead, but the cell phones have definitely hindered that. you know, everyone has one in their hand. So if you want to see something that you're interested in, you talk into your phone, you can get the information quickly, you know, instead of having to pay, you know, a six-figure amount to have an interactive ad. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just go back to the comment that I made about shoppable. You know, again, being a publisher where we're able to control the IP and the content, if we're included in the discussion early enough, what we're seeing is the ability to embed product into the content and then make that shoppable, right? But it depends on the platform that you're consuming and your ability to pause or tap. If you're in an OTT environment and I'm watching it on my cell phone, hit the button and I can go buy that jacket that my favorite actor in the show's consuming, right? And then of course, with our Bravo platform, so many of our celebrities have their own product lines. So our viewers are trained, depending on the platform, to engage with a shoppable experience. But again, it depends on the platform, it depends on the product, depends on the audience, and how early we're being brought into that conversation to talk about our potential solutions.
I think that'll do it. Thank you, Tom. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.